Hello Year 9 and welcome to today's lesson. Now we're starting a new topic now and we're going to be looking at the rise of the Nazis. So today our question is, why did people vote for the Nazis? Now I want to start off by thinking about Germany's position after World War I. So before World War I, Germany was on the rise. It was a new country. It had only been made in the 19th century. And it was a growing power with an expanding empire and basically big dreams. The Kaiser believed he could make Germany the greatest power in Europe. And then, of course, World War I happened. Instead of a great, quick, glorious war like the Kaiser thought it was, World War I turned out to be a disaster for Germany. By the end of the war, the German people were suffering terribly. Shortages, starvation, and Germany itself was on the point of collapse. There were riots and revolutions and violence on the streets. And this resulted in the Kaiser, the king, being thrown out of Germany and having to go into exile in Holland. Then, when it seems like Germany is at its very lowest point, we get the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. What I'd like you to do is copy this graph and add on the Treaty of Versailles. Would it go up near the top because things were going well for Germany? Or would it keep going down because the Treaty of Versailles was a bad thing for Germany? Well, hopefully you remember from the work before Christmas that the Treaty of Versailles was catastrophic for Germany. It was an absolute disaster. It crippled them militarily, taking away their army. It destroyed their hopes of a great empire, taking away lots of their land. And most importantly, it crippled them economically by making them pay lots and lots of money back, or reparations that it would now have to pay to the Allies who won. This would ruin the German economy for the next few years. So, picking up then. This then happened 4 years after the Treaty of Versailles. So what's happening in these images? Well, top left, we have children playing with wads of cash. Bottom right, there they are making a kite out of banknotes. Centre picture, that is a man picking up his wages for the day. And there we have, I think it's a 50 million mark note, so 50 million pounds as a single note. That is insane, isn't it? Would your mum and dad let you play with money in this way? Can you imagine yourself just making a kite from lots of £20 notes? No, of course not. So why on earth is this happening? It's because of hyperinflation, which took place in Germany in 1923. Now, if we break that word down, hyperinflation. Well, hyper means extreme, doesn't it? If you're hyper, you become like extremely excited. So, extreme, then what's inflation? Inflation is when the price of goods rises. Now, this happens all the time, quite naturally. My example is always the Freddo. 10p when I was little to buy a Freddo. Oh, how much does it cost these days? 40, 50p? I'm always shocked by the price of it. seems far too expensive. And if you talk to your mum and dad, they might have bought a house back in the day for like 10,000, 30,000. Today, you buy houses for 500,000. So price rises normally do happen, and that's not really a problem. The problem in Germany was these price rises were happening so quickly, and the price was rising so much, it became impossible to live a normal life. Right, I'd like you to watch the Make Germany Pay documentary here. Watch the documentary and then copy and complete this little flow diagram that explains what happened in hyperinflation. All of the words you'll need are there in the yellow box. You just need to put them in the right place. So, following the Treaty of Versailles, Germany had to pay massive reparations, lots and lots of money, to the Allied powers, to France and to Britain. And the problem was they couldn't afford to pay all that money. It was far too much. So by 1923, Germany had run out of money to pay these reparations, and they just stopped paying. Naturally, this really angered the French. The French, remember, were the ones in the Treaty of Versailles who wanted to be harshest because they were the ones who had suffered the most. So the French said, fine, you won't pay, we'll invade and we'll take what is owed to us by force. And so they invaded a German industrial region called the Ruhr, R-U-H-R. Now, the Ruhr was incredibly important for Germany. It's where they got lots of their coal and minerals, and lots of their industry was there. And the French just marched in and took over. What could the Germans do? The Treaty of Versailles had reduced their military down to only 100,000 men. There was no way the Germans could use an army to get the French off their land. But they had to do something. So they decided that they would resist through passive resistance. And what happened was all of the workers in this region, the Ruhr, went on strike. That means electricity, water, transport, all of the basic things you need to live, they all stopped because the workers refused to work. Now, the strikers needed to be paid, and the German government started to pay them. But the problem was the workers were now no longer producing any goods to sell. So the government had to pay more money, and yet it had very little money coming in. So it really didn't have enough money for them. It decided what it would do was print some money. Now, economics. Goods are only worth money, worth a lot, if there's a very few of them in the world. So, for example, diamonds are worth a lot because there's not very many of them in the world. Whereas cookies, loads of cookies, so cookies are cheap. Now, when they start to make loads and loads and loads of money, that money starts to lose its value. And so you need more money to buy the same stuff. So a loaf of bread might have cost you 1 mark one day, and a week later it might cost you 10 marks. A week after that it might be 100 marks. A week after that it might be 1,000. And that was the problem in Germany. The prices went up astronomically, a huge amount. So people were buying coffees for like 2 million marks. An insane amount of money. It's just not workable, is it? Can you imagine bringing a wheelbarrow to pay for your goods because a purse, you wouldn't fit it all in. So the economy basically shut down. Workers started to get paid twice a day because the money changed in value that quickly. People stopped spending the money. It wasn't worth it. Instead, they burnt the money to keep warm, or they used it as wallpaper. That is how little value this money had. So this little diagram also shows you how, or rather why, the prices rose so quickly, so dramatically in this thing called hyperinflation, which took place in 1923. So now, can you have a little look at page 23 of the textbook? What were the effects of the occupation by the French? And what was the effect of hyperinflation? Most importantly, we've got the fact that you need more money to buy the same amount of goods, a huge amount of money. And this is perhaps best demonstrated by the fact that the price of bread rose to 20 billion marks. Billion. That's insane. So this meant that those who had a lot of money to start with in their savings, say they've got £10,000 in savings, saw all of those savings overnight become worthless because £10,000 used to be able to buy them a house, and now it will buy them a coffee. This meant the rich and the middle classes were the ones who were particularly hurt by hyperinflation, and they were the ones who particularly hated the new German government. They were the ones who were looking for a new kind of government, a new kind of leader who would help sort out Germany and save it from its current woes. There was one man who saw the desperate period that Germany was going through in the 1920s, and he decided it was a moment to capitalise on. Perhaps he could take advantage of this in order to get himself into power. And he published a book that became very popular in Germany. That book was called Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf means my struggle, and it was written by Adolf Hitler. He wrote it in 1924, right after hyperinflation happened. I'd like you to have a look at some of the key policies in Mein Kampf using the information in the textbook, and then complete the sheet on Show My Homework. Think about the situation that Germany was in, the horrendous economics, the price of everything, the fact that middle classes have lost their savings. Why do the things he's saying in this book appeal to the Germans in the 1920s? So, read the textbook pages and complete the tasks from the green box on page 33 in your exercise book. Finally, a quick recap, condensing. What is it that Hitler promised Germany in this period that made people like him and want to vote for him? Can you name 3 things? Now, interestingly, despite all of this chaos that's happening in Germany, Hitler doesn't become Chancellor for another 10 years. So, why do you think he wasn't popular enough to become the leader of Germany in 1923? We'll think about that next lesson. Bye everyone.